Hey everybody, I wanted to create a little video for all of my brides and even some photographers out there. This might be a little helpful. But basically I'm going to run you through how I generally create timelines for my weddings. Usually I base them off of a really rough kind of timelines from the planner or the coordinator, sometimes from the bride and groom themselves. And I usually start with the ceremony time and kind of work out from there. It's pretty important to understand that the different times that people will be exiting, or at least the time they think they'll be exiting, and then also to kind of look at the time that you think that it might take you to get ready, and how long you've hired a photographer or a videographer for, how long you have the venue for. So generally I start with, let's see where this is, the ceremony time. So when I spoke with this couple, one of the first things I asked them to give me would be the time that they know the ceremony will be starting, because that's pretty definite. And then how long I thought that it would last, and then their exit time. So this was the first thing I had in this schedule. Let me kind of create another copy of this to show you what I was looking at. All right, so and this is a summer wedding, so there's a lot more sunlight, which is what that orange stands for in the stuff. And then down here is where it gets a little bit darker. There's not as much natural light. I kind of do that for myself because I love color coding things, but I also do it for the bride and groom and everyone who's there to kind of understand what light we'll be looking at. Sometimes people say they want family portraits at 9 o'clock, but then they don't really think ahead the fact that it's going to be dark outside, and the look of the photo will be a little bit different than if you were to take it at like 5 o'clock. So I usually start with something like this. I kind of build each of my schedules off of a previous schedule that I've built, and then off of what the bride and groom give me. Depending on whether or not you've hired me. A lot of photographers do create some sort of timeline. I usually go pretty deep into the timeline and create about a 2-page detailed timeline, just to make sure that everyone's on the same page. And of course there's tons of flexibility. A lot of times they kind of vary on the day, like anywhere from being 10 minutes behind to being an hour ahead. I've had a lot of different things happen, so they're kind of built with the idea to be a little bit flexible. So let's see. So I kind of like to start with all this, these colors present, and then kind of go from there. And this is usually about what I start with. So I love to be like, okay, so this couple has hired me for 8 hours. Typically I usually do 8 hours or full day coverage. Kind of been leaning a lot towards full day coverage, just because I love to be able to give all my clients a full day experience and not kind of have to worry about adhering to a certain timeline. But it'll depend on who you've hired and what sort of things you've been looking for. So I start with the understanding that the ceremony begins at 5, and I talked with this couple, and they kind of assured me it was going to be a really short ceremony, 10 or 15 minutes. So I usually try to build in a little bit of extra time. I did 5:20 instead of, I think they were saying it'd be like 5:15. Honestly, to be safe, you might even want to put like 5:30 in there. Sometimes ceremonies start a little later than you expect. And then I kind of go backwards from there. So since they've hired me for 8 hours, I took the exit time being 10:30, and I subtracted 8 hours, and so the start time would technically be 2:30 p.m. But a lot of times, especially if they are 8-hour days, I will do more like a 2:30 start time would be, I arrive at like 1:30 p.m. And that kind of gives me enough time to meet everybody, not be in a hurry, check out all of the details of the place, make sure that people feel relaxed and calm and not kind of, you know, in a rush in any way. And then from there, I kind of come in and put the really important stuff. So that would be things like bridesmaids pictures, and then, let's see, groomsmen photos. Let me see, this couple is not doing a first look. Everyone has their opinions on that. I will never push a couple to do either way. I will obviously tell the couple a lot about like why it would be better to do a first look or not. I actually didn't have one for my wedding, so I can't be one to tell people you have to have a first look. Let's see. So bridesmaids, groomsmen, before any of this, bride gets on dress. That's pretty important. And detail shots. I usually take at least a half hour to do detail shots, and usually I'll arrive a little earlier, especially if I think that those are going to could take me a bit longer than they usually do. And a lot of times I'll come in here and I'll put notes to the couple or to, the bridesmaids, and just so that people know where to be, and when to be dressed and everything. So for the bride getting on her dress, I would definitely suggest that the mother of the bride, MOB, is dressed and ready and then I'll fill in the time depending on when this happens. So, and then same with bridesmaids, usually. And let's see, I know she gave me a few guidelines. They were hoping, let's see, the sunset time. I usually do that. It's kind of like the third thing. I usually come in and make sure that I have the sunset so I know when our time for natural light pictures are going to be up. So then I usually come in here, and technically the start time would be 2:30, but I would probably say that at about 2, or I'll say 1:50, I'll do detail shots. It's usually what I start with. It's usually easier to start with those, kind of warm up for the day. So I would take that out from here, and then, oops, getting rid of everything. All right. Let's see, start time, detail shots. So then it really depends on what the couple wants. A lot of times groomsmen photos will be before the bridesmaids, just to give people a little bit of extra time, the girls a little extra time to get ready and everything. So I would say 2:30 groomsmen. So sometimes people want just a few shots of the groomsmen. Some people want more detailed shots of them getting ready. Sometimes I'll have my second shooter stay with them a lot longer. But let's just say that we're going to do getting ready, and then groomsmen ready except for boutonnieres, which I never know how to spell. Come on. And ties. That way I can get some great pictures of them getting on their ties and boutonnieres. And then we usually do individuals with groom, and then group photos. And then a lot of times I like to build in time here for close family photos. So that kind of gives us a little extra time later in the day. So, we'll get shots of the bride with his dad, the groom with his dad, and with close family, anyone that's already there, and that way we don't have to do those later. And then I usually say, come on back here. Let's just say 3 p.m. would be dress time. So this would be when the bride would get on her dress. And I love to make sure the mom of the bride, of course, is there and ready, doesn't feel rushed, and the bridesmaids are ready. And then I usually like to build in, sometimes this takes a little longer than, some people say it's 5 or 10 minutes, but sometimes it lasts up to 20, 25 minutes. So I would say about 3:20, we'll do, get rid of that. Sometimes, sorry guys, I'm scatterbrained. All right, so we do like a few shots of the bride, so I'll just say bridal portraits. It kind of varies on the day depending on how much time we have built in. And then I would say about 3:35 would be bridesmaids photos. And sometimes it takes a little bit longer than groomsmen depending on how many there are and how many different shots they're wanting. But let's see. So bridesmaid photos, and it's the same kind of thing as with the guys. So we'll do individuals and then close family photos depending on time. So let's see. Come in here. All right. And change that. And then I kind of look, and so we don't have a first look here, and let's just say that these will end at like 4:15 p.m., which is actually perfect time because I usually like to leave at least 20 to 30 minutes before the ceremony for everyone to kind of hide from the guests that are arriving and to have just a moment to breathe. So done with pre-ceremony photos, time to breathe, which is a super important point. I would leave in your wedding schedule plenty of time to relax and not feel like every moment of your entire day is taking photos or having to be somewhere. At least leave like 10-minute pockets in there for you to sit down and just kind of enjoy the day. So I would usually make a note to myself by about 4:30 or earlier that both me and my second shooter would be at ceremony location. So that way we can shoot all the details, get guests arriving, and then of course the ceremony. So that's kind of self-explanatory. Usually right after the ceremony I like to leave a few minutes to get just a few shots of the bride and groom just married, and then we go into family photo time. That way the family can usually just stick around to grab shots of everyone there and then send them on to the reception. So this really varies between each different wedding, but I would say 20 to 30 minutes is usually typical. Sometimes it's a lot shorter, sometimes it's a lot longer, depending on how many shots everyone's wanting. So, and then I usually do a full bridal party, so they don't have to wait around. It usually takes about 10 minutes or so, and then we do bride and groom, just married. And of course, leave a few minutes to do that. And then I would say by about 6:15, honestly, I might even do that a little earlier. I would head into the reception and make sure that that everything is set up ready, that I have my lighting right for them being introduced. So photographers into reception prep. And then, of course, they're introduced. A lot of times people will go right into their first dance, sometimes right into eating. And I always build in time for my second shooter and I to eat a little bit. And so since they weren't going first and straight dances, I would say about 6:30, 6:35 dinner. So I would usually leave like at least 15 minutes or so for your photographers to eat so that they're not hangry. I get very hangry. All right, so then about 6:50, we'd head back into whatever's happening. So sometimes that's just candid shots. And then, of course, toasts start not too long after that. Dun, 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 toasts. Sometimes I like to do some sunset shots. So I would say by about 7:20, depending on how long toasts are. Some toasts are really short, some are super long. I've talked to the couple about this, and it's kind of one of those things that we're hoping to get done, but if something happens that she prefers to stay for all the toasts and let that go as long as possible. So, we're going to say possible sunset shoot. Those are usually relatively short, somewhere around 10 to 15 minutes the most. We come back in, prep for the cake cutting. This is sort of where you fill in all the random details. So these are things like bouquet and garter toss. And sometimes there's special things happening. I've had couples, you know, announce where they're going on their honeymoon and different sorts like that. So bouquet and garter toss and dancing. Sometimes I put exact times depending on what the couple thinks. Other times I kind of leave this open, kind of let the reception be a little bit more naturally flowing depending on what's happening. And that's pretty much it. We get to the grand exit. I usually put in like 10:15 prep. So if it looks like me and my second shooter are gone, it's not the case. It's just that we are outside getting ready for the grand exit. And that's about it. So this is kind of just a general idea of how I go through a wedding schedule. And you know, of course, every wedding is a little different. I usually work with couples one-on-one just to make sure that, you know, of course, I'm getting all the details, the shots that they're wanting, but at the same time that it's flowing well with their planner's schedule and the whole day and not kind of rushing them. So I always recommend building in like a little extra time than you think it'll take. So if you think the ceremony will take 15 minutes, maybe say that it'll take 30. I would recommend throwing in a few extra minutes before your reception for you guys to just take a deep breath and not feel like you're running into your reception, which can feel a little crazy. So yeah, just let me know if you have any questions. I'm happy to share any more details about how I create schedules. I create these in Word. It's not anything too fancy, but then I usually export them as PDFs and make them look really nice for my couples. So thanks, that's it.